Super Paper Mario is one of my favorite games of all time, and it's made up of some truly unique chapters. My name is Domaini, and I'll be ranking every chapter from worst to best. Number 8, Chapter 1, Lineland. Starting off our list is the chapter that started off the game. This is an amazing chapter with great concepts that suffers from first world syndrome. The majority of this chapter is designed to teach the player how to play the game. Due to this inevitability, there's not as many complex or flourished ideas as the other chapters. Chapter 1-1 is kind of like a replication of the original Super Mario Bros. Level 1-1, and Chapter 1-2 helps you master it with events like having to flip to evade the boulders and find the Red Bridge Man. Chapter 1-2 also introduces you to the first swappable pixel, Thoreau. Chapter 1-3 continues to explore the flip mechanic. Both the 3D flip mechanic and pixels are integral to the rest of the game, and Chapter 1-4's Fractale is a test of your mastery of pixels and 3D flipping as Mario. There's not much else to say about Chapter 1 other than that it makes an excellent tutorial world that just doesn't hold up to other chapters for being very simple. And number 7, Chapter 4, Outer Space. Here's another chapter that suffers because of its obligation. The entire chapter takes place in space, meaning there's a large open environment to explore in some of the levels. For what the chapter is attempting to accomplish, it does excellently. However, the vast base of chapters 4-1, 4-2, and really 4-3 allows for a lack of memorable locations and a slower pace in comparison to other levels. Okay, so with the negatives out of the way, the chapter still does have a lot of positives. The atmosphere of the space sections in the first 3 levels is absolutely phenomenal. When you're traveling through space, you feel like you're actually on a space expedition. Both the atmosphere and character development of Squirps is exceptional. He begins as an integral part of exploring the universe in the first 3 levels and ends with a twist. In 4-4, after the two of you battle one of the best villains in a Mario game, Mr. L, we all learn the truth of Squirps and his mother. After all this time of adventuring alongside this tiny green alien, it turns out Squirps is actually Scorp Corrigalin Scorpina. Sorry if I mispronounced that, Squirps. And he is the Prince of Scorpia. Learning that Squirps' mother sent him on this quest to guide you to the Pure Hearts as long as 1500 years ago reminds the player how important collecting these Pure Hearts is. Also, Chapter 4-4 is just amazing. The Woe Zone is one of my favorite levels in this entire game. Number 6, Chapter 5, Land of Kragnons. Chapter 5 has an incredible final level like a lot of other chapters in this game, but it's held back by the first 2 levels. The first level introduces you to the Kragnons. After learning that the plant Florosapiens are kidnapping the Kragnons, you chase them throughout the land of Kragnons for the next 2 levels. Many of the puzzles in this area feel very cheap, such as having to backtrack twice for a combination, one of which is 25 presses long for some reason. Another example of this is the hammer pixel you unlock, Cudge. The puzzles regarding Cudge aren't much more complex than hitting certain yellow blocks. However, once you get to the 3rd level, you're introduced to incredible level design. Chapter 5-3 takes place in a very small area with a lot of clever backtracking. It also introduces you to Flint Cragley, who's a fan favorite. Chapter 5-4 does the same thing as well. One of the best examples is the Florosprout you unlock after defeating O-Chunks. Another example is the use of the new Pixel Dottie, allowing you to explore the same area in a whole new light. Using Dottie's shrink ability allows you to enter miniature doors and pipes seen throughout your adventure. This clever design allows for a great feeling of accomplishment, like you've truly conquered this level, and also maybe you remembered some places earlier in the game that seemed too small to fit through that you can go to now. And I actually really like this design choice that rewards you for remembering things from earlier in the game that you now can go to since you unlock the pixel. Anyway, to go back to the battle against O-Chunks, this encounter gives you an incredible framework for later events. Dementio uses the Florosprout to mind control O-Chunks, which is not the last time we see the Florosprout be used this way. The best of all the levels in this chapter is definitely 5-4 due to its build up and boss fight. Going through the location of the final boss, you read all the history of the Florosapiens, you learn about all the accomplishments the civilization has made and start to feel some remorse for them. Knowing you're going to have to battle the current ruler, you subconsciously wish you didn't have to destroy the accomplishments of the Florosapiens. This grief is all made even larger once the boss is defeated. Mario and the gang learn that the Florosapiens actually had no evil intentions. The only wrongdoings they have ever done were due to their mental illnesses caused by the polluted water, and that polluted water, it turns out, was caused by the Kragnons. And remember, those are the beings you've been helping this entire time. After you get the Pure Heart, you probably feel guiltier than you have in maybe any other Mario game. Number 5, Chapter 6, Samur's Kingdom. Samur's Kingdom has the most boring gameplay of all the chapters. The player has to tediously battle 25 very similar enemies while reading very witty dialogue. However, where Samur's Kingdom fails in gameplay, it makes up for in story, which is a big part of this game. The purpose of this kingdom isn't necessarily the gameplay, but it's to expose them to complex emotions and the true terror of the void. After completing 25 battles, the void grows frighteningly bigger, causing all of the Samur guys to go into a complete panic. Knowing the void is too close to being stopped, there's a feeling of shock. Kinda reminds me of Majora's Mask towards the end. For the first time, there's something threatening over 100 innocent people, and there's nothing Mario can do to stop it. The player's hit with the realization that this entire kingdom is going to be obliterated. Yeah, this sounds a lot like Majora's Mask. Count Bleck even makes his first appearance with the heroes since the beginning of the game. We see the anticipated realization of the relationship between Timpani and Bloomier as Count Bleck acknowledges his past relationship with Timpani, and Tippy begins to have some recollection of her past. After a battle with Mimi that tests the player's mastery of 2D to 3D flipping, since the first battle with Mimi back in Chapter 2, the worst happens. The void consumes this entire world full of life and gorgeous Japanese scenery, and also the great music in this chapter. It's peak. But upon re-entering the world, Mario and company realizes the result of Count Bleck's work. The entire world, once bursting with colors, is now completely white. In other words, everything and everyone once there has been completely destroyed. The player must travel through miles of emptiness, hearing nothing but their own footsteps. The level ends with a battle against Mr. L, adding more personality to the character who proves to be very important both as Mario's brother and as a boss by the end of the game. It goes without saying that the atmosphere of this chapter is absolutely haunting and phenomenal. Number 4, Chapter 2, Merle's Mansion. Chapter 2 is an amazing chapter, and I know some people don't like a couple of these levels, but I'll get to that. First, I want to talk about Star Witches 2-1, which kind of feels like more of Chapter 1, which is ranked lowest on this list. But after this transition level, Chapter 2 really shines, especially with its theme. Chapter 2-2 takes place in Merle's Mansion, where we encounter one of Count Bleck's minions for the first time, Mimi. She pretends to be Merle's maid, but once unchaining a chain beast, he ignores Mario and chases her, serving as the hint of her cruelty. There's several traps hidden throughout the mansion, which is a recurring theme that begins here. 2-3 is honestly one of the most clever levels in the entire game. After breaking a pot, Mimi tasks you with paying her back in the form of 1 million rubies, and the initial method used to collect rubies is kind of absurd and it takes like 12 hours. However, after paying for a tip from a prisoner, it's discovered there's a secret room in which the player can obtain rubies much faster. This discovery is incredibly relieving and makes for a great sense of accomplishment. Overall, the concept of this level is very unique, making for a memorable experience. Now, the gameplay of this is pretty simple. Like, it's not my favorite level, and it seems more of just Nintendo wanted to do something funny here instead of make a well-designed level, but I still think it's well-designed for what it's trying to do, if that makes sense. I understand if someone completely hates this level. It's not my favorite, but I definitely don't hate it either. Let's move on to Chapter 4, which is probably the scariest level in a Mario game. So after revealing the truth about Mimi, she goes on a rampage, shifting into her true spider form and chasing you throughout the basement of Merle's Mansion. This section of the game will always be horrifying, especially on the first playthrough, making for an incredibly memorable experience. So Mimi is invincible in spider form, tracking you down across the mansion, and you need to get to the end. And what happens when you get to the end? Mimi shapeshifts once again, but this time into Merle. With the two looking identical, the player must witness the 66th annual That's My Merle show to determine who the true Merle is. And I want to know why this happened 65 times in the past. Like, have there been other heroes who have tried to do the same thing as Mario here? But the cleverness of the dialogue and overall humor of the situation, and the song, which is also great, makes for a show worth watching. The following battle against Mimi is spectacular, especially considering all the buildup behind her spider form with the previous basement chase. The battle tests the player's skills of the Pixel Thoreau and overall fighting skills. The action-packed level makes the Pure Heart all that more rewarding, adding to the significance the Pure Hearts have to the player. Universally, Chapter 2-2, 2-3, and 2-4 are phenomenal levels, packed with creativity and humor that are held back a little bit by 2-1 or 2-3 depending on who you ask. Number 3, Chapter 3, Fort Francis. Like Chapter 2, Chapter 3 is a shining example of back-to-back action and incredible humor. Chapter 3 takes these concepts from Chapter 2 and expands upon them with a great first level. Level 3-1 begins by introducing the anime-loving Francis, who has come to take Tippy. The absence of Tippy in an earlier chapter is meant to make the player realize how important she actually is to the gameplay. Making the butterfly pixel a target of desire is important in making her a likable character, because without her, there's a lot you can't do, and she's also integral to the story. Anyway, 3-1 has a gorgeous pixel art style that continues throughout the rest of the chapter. I think the highlight of this is the battle with Bowser. It's not the most spectacular boss fight or anything, and it is pretty easy, but a battle against Bowser will always be epic. Then 3-2 takes you underwater, and being a water level, it's not the all-time greatest, but definitely makes for a very solid level. It has some great puzzles, most of which have to do with combinations, and an extraordinary boss fight against a massive blooper. Alright, maybe it's not the best boss fight either, but I always like this for some reason. All you have to do is just remember to target target the red tentacles and evade the attacks with Pooper's long, squishy arms. Then 3-3 is full of vertical platforming that can get very frustrating and very quickly. This was the second hardest level for me as a kid, and I'll get to the hardest level later. Slight mistakes can lead to having to repeat a large section of this level, but the boss fight once again more than makes up for it. 3-3 is the anticipated first battle with Dementio, the last of Count Bleck's minions, except Nastasia, to be battled at this point. The battle introduces us to Dementio's attacks, as well as Dimension D, a dimension created by Dementio. Battling here is a great introduction to the dimension that proves to be important in the game's ending. Then we have 3-4, Fort Francis, which is honestly one of the highlights of this entire game, not just the chapter. To start, the pixel art style once again shines in this level. The vibrant colors and simplistic designs are gorgeous and fit the atmosphere of Fort Francis perfectly. There's also plenty of Nintendo references in the fortress, including a Virtual Boy, N64, GameCube, and of course Yoshi's. This castle has some of the best puzzles in this game, including cleverly flipping into 3D to cross a pit of spikes, and answering humorous security questions to access the keys. Speaking of humor, the fight against Francis has some of the best humor in the entire series. If you've played this fight, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The highlight of the battle is the dating simulation between Princess Peach and the nerdy lizard Francis. It's called Swoon.exe, and it's just a hilarious feature that captures the charm of Paper Mario perfectly. Also, I guess Francis was popular enough to end up in the Invincible comics. If you want to find out more about that, check my short that I made about that a couple weeks ago. Number 2, Chapter 7, Underwhere and Overthere. These actually have to be two of the most clever ideas for level locations in Mario games. The Underwhere answers the question of where creatures of the Mario universe go once they run out of lives. The characters of the Underwhere have witty dialogue describing what Koopa Troopa they ran into or what bottomless pit they fell down to get here. Not to mention, this is the level where Mr. L takes a break and we're finally reintroduced to Luigi. Using Luigi's super jump to find Love Bee is a blast. This was just my favorite power to use. Like, Peach had the umbrella, Bowser had fire, Mario of course had 3D, but for some reason I just always love Luigi's jump in this game. Anyway, after speaking with the ruler of the Underwhere and agreeing to guide Love Bee to the Overthere, Chapter 7-1 ends and then 7-2 begins. Chapter 7-2 is full of mythological references, including the Fates and the three-headed Chain Chomp, which also makes for both a refreshing and hilarious battle. The triple Chain Chomp, of course, is a reference to Cerberus, three-headed dog that prevents the dead from leaving the underworld. This is also the one turn-based battle in this game. There's character consistency shown as we see Bowser once again view the Mario brothers as enemies. After a battle against the fiery beast though, he agrees to rejoin your team for his one goal that's never changed: being with Princess Peach. After exiting the Underwhere, the weakest of Chapter 7's levels, Chapter 7-3 begins in the sky. This level is centered around traversing clouds to find the correct fruit to awaken Peach from her slumber. The tedious platforming and backtracking makes this probably my least favorite level in the game, or at least close to it. Like, this was the most difficult level for me as a kid. I was always confused on where to go. However, even with this level, I just love the rest of this chapter so much. Chapter 7-4 does have some tedious gameplay, but I still like it a lot better. You're tasked with collecting 3 ore, which require a lot of backtracking and some more confusion, but it doesn't feel as annoying as 7-3. However, once collected, and the NIMBYs agree to hold off the attackers from the Underwhere, the players encounter Love Bee's father Granby, who had been attacked by the leader of the Underwhere attackers, Bone Chill. Bone Chill is meant to be this game's equivalent to Lucifer, a fallen NIMBY turned evil. Yeah, Nintendo's really getting biblical with this game. Bone Chill reveals Love Bee is actually the pure heart, and her mother and father are not who she thinks they are. After a boss fight that should be much tougher, Love Bee, her father Granby, and her mother Jades have a very emotional talk. The dialogue that follows is some of the most touching Super Paper Mario has to offer. Love Bee and her 2 guardians realize the reality of the situation and what Love Bee must do in a heart-wrenching conversation. Collecting the pure heart that was once Love Bee, the player further realizes how important the pure hearts are to both the heroes and to the victims of the threatening void. Number 1, Chapter 8, Castle Bleck. The final chapter of Super Paper Mario encompasses everything a final chapter of a video game should be. Each level draws parallels to the villains and the heroes of the story, growing the characters to their highest potential. Chapter 8-1 has Bowser's face-off against O-Chunks, who is larger and chunkier than ever. Battle between the 2 tough guys of the game directly shows how similar the 2 characters really are. Their cooperation to save the hero further proves the bond the 2 have. Despite their everlasting battle of toughness, their sacrifice signifies that the character of Bowser and O-Chunks is completely fleshed out. Rather than drawing parallels between Bowser and O-Chunks, Chapter 8-2 compares Princess Peach and Mimi. Mimi's abilities are explored to their fullest potential, with traps and mimics of other characters being plentiful. The last battle against the Spider-Woman is a battle between the princess and Mimi. When it seems like all hope is lost for Mimi as she's about to fall seemingly to her doom, Peach puts her own life at risk to save her. And then Dementio shines in Chapter 8-3 with rooms full of sneaky enemies and wacky tricks. The parallels between the quirky Luigi and Dementio are shown here, and then you go through all the chapters in the game to get back here. Chapter 8-4 is everything the final level should be. The three main gameplay aspects of this game, battling enemies, platforming, and flipping into 3D, are abundant, with rooms of the toughest enemies and platforming sections with pipes hidden in 3D. This is truly a test of your mastery of the game. The final boss is a masterpiece by every sense of the word. I know I've mentioned this a few times, but the song is just so peak. Look up the Ultimate Show if you haven't. It's just so wonderful, it's nearly indescribable. After the touching dialogue between Lady Timpani and Bluemere, the battle begins with many restrictions. This includes having only Mario as a playable character and Count Bleck's shield. However, after a few attempted hits, Bowser, Peach, and Luigi arrive, and upon arrival, the Pure Hearts illuminate the battlefield and counter the Chaos Heart. With a full roster of characters, the true fight against Bluemere begins. This takes place in the very room the player's been observing throughout cutscenes in the entire game, giving the environment much more importance. Bluemere's arsenal of moves includes a temporary shield like that of the Chaos Heart, and miniature black holes like that of the Void. These two moves represent the danger Bluemere has posed throughout the entire game. Upon defeat, Lady Timpani and Bluemere get to speak once again. Bluemere requests the heroes end his game, however Timpani begs for any other option. Before they can reach a conclusion, Nastasia sacrifices herself so that the Count is not hit by Dementio's attack. Seeking to create a world of peace, Dementio sends Bluemere, Timpani, and Nastasia to his dimension, and combines his powers with that of Luigi's and the Chaos Heart, and the true final battle begins. While the player is exposed to the other worlds being threatened by the near-complete void, Lady Timpani and Bluemere have yet another heart-wrenching moment. Count is overcome with grief and declares that there's nothing to do but accept defeat, while Timpani attempts to convince the man that she loved to stop. Then Bluemere's minions return, and their persistent loyalty to him, otherwise known as Count Bleck, creates a new set of Pure Hearts used to counter Dementio's. The final battle isn't extremely tough, but carries extreme weight due to everything that's riding on it. Once they defeat Dementio, Bluemere and Timpani conclude there's only one way to counter the Chaos Heart, and they have to profess their love to each other. After this, they live happily together, presumably in the afterlife. The emotional stakes of this that the game has been leading up to the entire time pays off here. Like, imagine getting a Mario game like this now, where they barely have any story elements. Even besides the story, everything I described in this chapter is just so good. I love the level design here. And anyway, that's just my opinions on this game's chapters. You don't have to agree. This is just my personal ranking. It's not based on anything objective, just how much I personally enjoyed each one. I'd love to hear your ranking in the comments. Be sure to like and subscribe, as it really helps me out, and consider becoming a channel member if you like what I do here. Thank you for watching Domainy, and I'll see you next time.